Привет, moi druzy. Hello, my friends, and thank you for joining me today. My name is Darren Gerdes, and I'm going to cover today's events and help you understand where we are and where we're headed. So I'm only going to cover about 5 major topics. First, I'm going to talk about viewers correcting me and what they've said, some of their comments, and also a shout out. I'm going to talk about sending tanks and the timing of sending tanks. They're not going to be there immediately. I'm going to talk about how Zelenskyy has been being chastised for now asking for more. Now he's getting tanks checked off the list. Now let's talk about jets. And then another wave of missile attacks across Ukraine and how that played out. And finally, we'll have some fun with Russian state media. So yesterday I told you that I was no tank expert, and I proved it, apparently. Although Bradleys and Marauders and AMX-10s are technically not tanks, and I do know that, they will fit very nicely into Ukraine's operational strategy to strike fast and storm Russian positions. Okay, so I was talking about the tanks building up. You had 14 from Poland, you had another 14 from Britain, you have another 14 from Germany, about 30 from the US, and somebody mentioned, don't forget the multiple T-72 tanks sent by Morocco, and there's 20 or 30 of those that are coming. So add that to the mix, then add the Bradley fighting vehicles. And now, when I was talking about the Abrams tanks, I said that I repeated what I saw in the news, which was talking about they use jet fuel, not diesel. And so a number of people, Voivodi, if you look at his comments were excellent, by the way. There's some expertise here. Jet fuel is not much different. Abrams can burn diesel. Worst case change the filters more often, and he went on in a number of posts. He talked about this kind of thing. And then somebody, when I was talking about the corruption side, somebody was talking about, remember, this is Cheryl, was talking about $640 toilet seat scandal. This goes back to the 90s. But the difference in that scandal was that this was companies being just greedy companies. This wasn't an individual trying to feather his own pocket in a time of war when people could die. I mean, it's a different thing here, but that's bad. This is worse. And this could actually split off coalition partners if they're not careful. So this is an incredibly dangerous and greedy and selfish and stupid thing for that guy to be doing. Finally, I keep saying, why I keep getting this comment, why do you keep saying you at the end of Ukraine is pronounced E, not you, likey, monkey, sunny, Frankie, correctly. Okay, I got it. I'm going to try to get it right. When I look to pronounce it, what I see here is this, where it looks like it's saying Ukrainian at the end, but it's Ukraini. I will get it right. I might get the rest of this wrong in the process, but I am trying. Now, while I'm at it, I want to give Ukraine Matters a shout out. This guy does a really good job. Everything that he said has been on point as far as I could detect. He lives in Denmark. His wife is Ukrainian, and he's pretty well versed on what's going on in Ukraine. Now, he's also given me a shout out, and I appreciate this. This is his channel, and he's talking, and I was thinking, so I paused, as you know, because I went up to see my mom, and while I was there, I wasn't really doing anything with this. But when I would go, across the street to get something to eat, I would check my email for work, and I would look at this, and I was like, how did I grow like 200 subscribers in the last couple of days when I'm not even presenting anything? Well, I was actually thinking, Darren, you need to shut up more because you keep, like, you're growing more when you're not actually talking. But the secret was he was saying this on his channel.
Yes, so it's Professor, I'm going to butcher the name, Professor Gerdes reviews the news. So basically this guy, this Professor Gerdes, he is a guy with actual titles. Well, I mean, I technically also have titles, but he's an actual professor, I guess.
Yep.
And he is definitely for Ukraine. My biggest challenge was that when people recommended to me his channel, I was not completely sure whether or not he supports Ukraine or he's like some other channels trying to just, milk the topic, essentially.
Yeah, so that was really interesting to me that he said he wasn't sure, because I'm trying to go through the news and I'm trying to be real careful and real. Now, I'm all in for Ukraine, but I'm trying to make sure that I'm getting everything as accurate as possible. But I was still surprised. I mean, how can you not think that? But if you think that if you had that experience, please let me know. I'm curious what I'm doing that's causing those kind of alarm bells. But I am all in on Ukraine.
No. He is actually quite nicely supports Ukraine. I have it in my community, like in my not community, but in my like when you go into YouTube channel, there is these tabs at the top, and you can open here channels tab, and here will be like channels that the person is essentially recommending, and I have the same on my channel. So when you go into Ukraine Matters, you can find all of the different channels that are really nice and are either supporting Ukraine or doing quite a good job of.
So I want to stop there. I want to say thank you to Ukraine Matters for giving me the shout out. I really appreciate it. I have found that pro-Ukraine bloggers and YouTubers and those that are in this kind of camp are very happy to introduce you to other audiences. We're not competing with each other so much as trying to keep the awareness out. I had, for example, a tippling philosopher and I got together and did a collaboration, and I'm very grateful for this. But you'll find that most of us want to tell you about other channels so that you can stay informed, because this is important. Okay, we're going to start here today with Zelenskyy's speech. In this speech, he says, I started the day with a conversation with Chancellor Scholz. He's thanking Chancellor Scholz for sending the tanks. Thank President Biden. He's thanking Biden for his leadership and more tanks. Today, I spoke with NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. We have to unlock the supply of long-range missiles, but he's also after jets as well, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. The European Court of Human Rights has announced a decision on the admissibility of the case concerning Russia's seizure of the territories of the east of Ukraine in 2014 and the occupiers' large-scale violation of human rights. That's going to be big. I'm going to talk about that in the next few days because that changes everything legally, but we'll come back to that later. For now, let's look at the British Ministry of Defense. The British Ministry of Defense only said one thing that's worth noting here today. Russia has likely completed training of the 2nd Guards Motor Rifle Division in Belarus, which has been carrying out training since autumn of 2022. Now, this whole new batch of people are about to come online, and there's going to be whether it's Ukrainian-led counteroffensive or a Russian-led offensive, something's going to be coming down the pike within a month or so. And hopefully we'll have the weapons on the battlefield before we get to that, but it's coming. Here's the last thing with this. There's a realistic possibility that other Russian units are being rotated into Belarus for similar training, that Russia will continue this model to regenerate and prepare its units to maintain force in Ukraine. Okay, the ISW with the same kind of theme. They're talking about how this is going to go down. Russian forces may be engaging in limited spoiling attacks across most of the front line in Ukraine in order to disperse and distract Ukrainian forces and set conditions to launch a decisive offensive operation in Luhansk. So if you can spread them out across enough territory, then it's harder for the Ukrainians to concentrate and to be able to counter it. So that's what they're talking about, I think. Russian military appears to be shifting its focus toward conventional forces and away from non-traditional forces like the Wagner Group, and that seems to be evident based on who they put in charge and, not giving Wagner any credit and those kind of things. The array of conventional forces across Luhansk Oblast front line suggests that Russian forces may be preparing for a decisive effort in this sector, supported by limited spoiling attacks elsewhere just to distract them. And then finally, the Kremlin and Russian mill bloggers attempted to play down the Western provision of tanks to Ukraine, indicating that they likely find these systems threatening to Russian prospects. So by saying in Russian press, and this is what I saw, oh, those tanks aren't really that big of a deal, by doing that, they're really showing a sign that these are a legitimate threat and something that they're very worried about. Okay, CNN, the U.S. and its allies want Ukraine to change its battlefield tactics in the spring. So rather than slug it out in Bakhmut, which has been kind of costly for Ukraine, it's been more costly for Russia, but kind of costly for Ukraine at the same time. The U.S. and Western officials are urging Ukraine to shift and prioritize instead to potential offensive in the south using different style of fighting, takes advantage of all the U.S. tech that they've been provided. So that's what they want them to do. The hundreds of armored vehicles and the U.S. and European countries have provided to Ukraine in recent weeks, including tanks, are now on the table. That's going to be a game changer. Now, I didn't say it before. I should have said it yesterday, and somebody corrected me. Morocco has sold an unknown number of T-72 main battle tanks. These are Soviet-era tanks. Around 20 of these are already sent to the front line in Ukraine a week ago. Thank you for correcting me. I appreciate my community because you keep me on my toes and we all learn together. Now, one of the difficulties is how long will it take for the tanks to get there? So the U.S. is announcing that they're sending Abrams. They're going to send 31 Abrams battle tanks, but the delivery could be a lengthy process. We're not talking days. We're not even talking weeks. We're talking potentially months. Delivering these tanks to the field is going to take time that we'll see and we'll use to make sure the Ukrainians are fully prepared, but time nonetheless. And time's not really on their side. The delivery of German Leopard 2 battle tanks will come by the end of March. So if anything kicks off in February, they're still not going to have these in play. In other news, the Turks are delivering more Bayraktar's TB2 drones, and they're awesome. Today we received 2 more Bayraktar TB2 drones from our great friends and partners in Ukraine, the Bayraktar company. Baykar handed them over free of charge. That's awesome. Now, this is a war between Russia and the West. Russia's saying that all day long, but the West isn't actually fighting. Ukraine's saying, give us the weapons, we'll fight. So he's got javelins, he's got drones, he's got anti-aircraft, he's got armored vehicles, and tanks are now here. So he's asking for even more because he wants to have every advantage he can when he's taking the fight to the enemy. This is Radio Free Europe. Zelenskyy has quickly pivoted to pressing his request for long-range missiles and military aircraft. Now it's necessary to, quote, go ahead with a supply of aircraft for Ukraine. Remember, he wanted a no-fly zone, and that was off the table almost immediately because that would have required other countries to be conducting that no-fly zone. Here's another article in Politico, and it shows the rift that I talked about yesterday. Conversations between more than half dozen Western military officials and diplomats confirm an internal debate about supplying Ukraine with jet fighters is already underway, pushed by Ukrainian officials with support from hawkish Baltic states. The Baltic states and Poland have been awesome. Washington has told Kyiv that supplying aircraft is a no-go for the moment, the diplomatic quoted above, but he added, there's a red line there, but last summer we had a red line on HIMARS, and that moved, and then it was battle tanks, and that's moving. So, okay, maybe they'll get them. I don't know. Other senior politicians are significantly less gung-ho. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz ruled out fighter jet deliveries on Wednesday, citing the need to prevent further military escalation. And that's the rift that I'm talking about between Southern Europe and the Eastern European states. There will be no fighter jet deliveries to Ukraine. This was made very clear early from the U.S. president. But how long that's going to stay, I don't know. They might be able to fight without it. I would like them to have it, but they might be able to do with whatever other technology to eliminate the combined arms being brought to bear upon them, or being able to fight combined arms without aircraft. All I know is this. I used this book in one of my classes, in my Power and Influence class. This is Colin Powell. He was the former Secretary of State and former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And when he was asked about, I'll put the link to this below, by the way, if anybody wants to read it. It's a really, really good book about leadership. And he was asked during the Gulf War, well, why'd you get Schwarzkopf, an extra carrier battle group, when he only, I think he asked for 2 and they got him 3. He said, it's a gang fight. Right? That was his answer, right? You don't want to half equip them. No, you want to, the Powell Doctrine is to mobilize overwhelming force and just get the fight over with. That was the way that you're supposed to do it. So in other news, the Russians are doing what the Russians have been doing, and that's they're pummeling Ukraine with a wave of missile and drone attacks. Thursday's rush hour. Great time to be sending missiles on the city, right? So 6 Tu-95 warplanes took off from the Arctic region in northern Russia, launching long-range missiles. Freaking cowards. Now, I think half of me respects that and is like, wow, that's strategic because you really can't reach up there. But imagine if Ukraine could reach up there and hit them in the Arctic. And how Russia would go apoplectic with the idea, hey, they hit so deep into our territory. Well, you're hitting them from there. I mean, so at any rate, yeah, I mean... Okay, air defenses shot down more than 15 Russian missiles. Strikes were also reported in the central region of Vinnytsia. Ukraine military said that aircraft defenses shot down 24 Iranian-made drones. Now remember, they're running out of those and they're going to have to be careful with them. Another report on the same thing talks about it like this. Some 47 cruise missiles were destroyed by the forces and means of air defense of the armed forces of Ukraine. 20 of them in the area of the Ukrainian capital. The enemy launched 55 air and sea-based missiles. And so, yeah, some 47 were destroyed. So 55 minus 47, fewer getting through. It's pretty good odds, but you want to eliminate as many as possible. Okay, now it's time for some fun with Russian state media. I'm only going to look at the headlines here because it doesn't make sense to talk about the rest of you can get it from the headlines. Major wave of airstrikes reported in Ukraine, and it's all this glorious, how we're just taking it to the enemy kind of stuff. It's pretty sad because, again, if this is what you're reading in Russia, you're thinking, oh, things are going great. You're going to be in for a surprise when you get another round of mobilization. Zelenskyy now asks the West for fourth-generation fighter aircraft and long-range missiles. It's like he keeps asking for more, and he's going to keep asking for more and more. Well, he's not asking for an ounce of their blood, so I think that that's a pretty fair deal. Russian robotic vehicles can destroy Leopard and Abrams tanks easily. So this guy, they think, can destroy Abrams and Leopard tanks easily. Well, we'll find out very shortly, won't we? Because the proof will be in the pudding, and we'll just see how that all works out. Next one. Does Russia fear NATO fighter aircraft in Ukraine? I'll give you a hint. The answer is no, they don't fear it because they really do fear it. And so they're trying to talk about how it's not a problem. So that's how their propaganda works. Russian military receives brochures educating them on how to destroy Leopard and Abrams tanks. We know the specifics of those tanks and where they can travel and operate. Well, they should know that, but that doesn't mean they're going to be effective in actually doing it. But that's Russian propaganda for you. If anything that I said here was useful, please share and like and subscribe and ring that bell so you can be notified. If you want to give to a good cause, I have links to Samaritan's Purse and United 24 and other causes in the links below. Please check those out. If you appreciate the work I'm doing and you want to leave me a tip, buy me a coffee, and I appreciate that. And I'm going to try to get this right with the Ukraini, not Ukrainu now. So, Dayuku shoku volodyaze za Ukraini. Okay? Better? Thank you for supporting Ukraine. See you again tomorrow.